Harry's Wife, Part 104.13. Word Salad and Fridge Magnet Platitudes. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. One of the things that Harry's wife regularly does, because she's the Duchess of Industrial Beige, is spout word salad. Essentially, incomprehensible gibberish, which comes out of her mouth where she says plenty but means absolutely nothing. She knows what she means, and if you were to say to her, "I don't understand what you meant," she would probably just repeat what she's just said, or dismiss you as being a dunderhead and not worth talking to. Much of what comes out of her mouth is insipid, nonsensical gibberish. It doesn't make any sense, or it's those wishy-washy fridge magnet platitudes. Why does she do this? Well, as you know, when it comes to involving herself with another person or persons, her narcissism operates to ensure that those people are brought under control, kept under control, and any threats to control are nullified. It also seeks to draw fuel from those individuals, their responses and reactions which power her, give her a sense of validation and internal power. In some instances, it will be seeking to gain character traits from them and residual benefits. Because there is essentially nothing to Harry's wife, she has to borrow from other people to sound knowledgeable, and she does this frequently. I've explained in parts passim, where she has taken other people's quotations and ideas. She regularly passes off the observations and work and comments and straight quotes of other people as if they are hers. Her cognitive function is low. She's nowhere near as clever as she thinks she is. And that is demonstrative in two aspects. First of all, the way that her narcissism functions, because cognitive function plays a significant part in that, but also in the way that she tries to sound cleverer than she actually is, which is part of her grandiosity. Rather than being straight talking so people understand what she's going on about, we get the pretentious twaddle, repeated uses of layers, lens, authenticness, all of which actually don't mean anything. And in Harry's wife's world, by talking in these weird sentences, it's to create a sensation of her being almost like some kind of mystical guru that is telling you all of these things, a little bit similar to the behaviour that Jada Pinkett Smith engages in. Harry's wife, no longer acting, tries to carve out for herself, a role of being a deep thinker, of somebody that is there on the side of women as a feminist in order to look at matters in a very deep manner and to convey them with an air of whenever she speaks on arse wipes. Whenever she gives a speech, she basically talks at a marshmallow, lashings of industrial beige, and only that the most ardent supporter or thicko is taken in by all this and thinks that what she has to say is monumentally inspirational and wonderful. You analyse any of her speeches, and you analyse it down to nothing. There's no substance to them whatsoever. Platitudes, meaningless word salad, other people's observations. The latest episode of Arsey Wipes, I'm not going to bother listening to her crapping on, but what I have done is I've read the transcript that comes from it. And in so doing, and avoiding having to listen to her breathy tones and attempting to sound all serious and inviting as she attempts to seduce the listener over the airwaves, I have lifted from the transcript various instances of her word salad in action alongside the fridge magnet platitudes. I've done this so that you can see just how many of them crop up in one pod crap that she has to offer. And also, you can perhaps spend a bit of time trying to work out what the fuck she's on about. They come thick and fast as I read through them, a variety of different ones. Let us commence. A way to be free in the world, not free from the world. Wise words, grasshopper. Because being free in who we are, breaking out of whatever is expected of us, this This is the work. I think actually the work is getting down the factory and making widgets, isn't it? Or attending in customer services to help shoppers. Or the work is wiping shitty bottoms, tidying up after toddlers, making sure that they're fed, ensuring that the house is kept tidy, changing the bed linen. Those are different types of work. Not being free in who we are, breaking out of whatever is expected of us. That's just wank. The next one. And if we could just get off that pendulum, get off this roller coaster, well, which one is it? A pendulum or a roller coaster? A pendulum goes from side to side. A roller coaster goes up and down. So which one? We could take Dr. Shifalafi's next piece of advice to heart. So what do you say we find out what happens when we step outside of the molds that don't fit and we stop buying into this illusion? Well, I think if people stop buying into this illusion, they would realise that you talk bollocks and you're a one-trick pony. And we're really thinking about how do we break out of the limiting versions of these moulds that society has carved out for us and settle into the layered, complex and fullest versions of our own truths. Answers on a postcard if you've any idea what that fucking well means. How do you be the fullest version of your own truth? You already are your own truth. But talking to her, it feels like you're talking to your favourite cousin, your cool aunt, your best friend, just all in one. And everything she says and how she says it, it feels like an honest, authentic breath of fresh air, as opposed to an inauthentic breath of stale air, which is the sensation that probably comes over you whenever you have to listen to Harry's wife. And look, her art imitates and excavates her life, finding new layers to the role of mom without all of this pressure of perfection. So her art finds new layers to the role of mum without a pressure of perfection and excavates her life. What, digs out her life? From what? Yeah, I mean, and there's also that quote from what you were saying about how deafening the silence is. But I've always loved that quote. The quiet part of the song is still part of the song. Ah, yes. Not only was she roundly ridiculed for saying that in the Cut interview, leading to the sacking of the journalist that was involved, she continues to use it again. And this is a very good example of Harry's wife in action. She doesn't learn from her mistakes. Why? Her narcissism doesn't think she makes any mistakes. So when she comes out with that crap the first time around about saying that the quiet part of the song is still part of the song, and everybody goes, what the dickens are you talking about, woman? That's ridiculous. She carries on repeating it. Why? Because she thinks it makes her sound important and mystical. After the break, we'll hear more of my conversation with Pamela, and we'll also explore another layer to the home front, which is how do we grapple with our capacity for love and care, not just with our children, and not just with ourselves, but with our partners too. So, how do you grapple with your love and care for everybody around you? Would you not just get on with it? And it just put me right back into the past, thinking about my childhood, our little quirks together. And then, with this episode on my brain, it got me thinking about all the ways my mum supported me. I don't think that would have taken you long, would it? She never did. She was missing for 10 years. How she took care of me in the house and herself, and how she just juggled so much. This strikes me as a rampant revision of history, and of course, once again, is a complete snub to her father, by not recognising the role that he played in essentially bringing her up. Yes, without question. Now we have an ability to see through a different lens where it's not just I don't know if you had Leave It to Beaver that's showing Canada like this very 1950s perfect housewife cookie cutter. You've got cookie cutter, right? Because all you do is trot out the same nonsense week after week after week. No, that Stepford wife and that model has evolved. It takes different shapes. It takes different ways of what it looks like. So much of the work that I've been doing is, to be able to have support for family leave, paid leave in this country. What works this? You mentioned it once in a letter to Congress, which everybody laughed at. Nothing else has happened since. Is that your definition of work? One letter? Probably is. And this idea that work at home is not real work, that's hurting all of us. In the US, we don't have federally guaranteed paid parental leave, and that speaks directly to what we value in a society, and also what we undervalue as a society. But if we didn't devalue the work of care and work in the home, maybe, it would be easier for women. What you mean devaluing it by having legions of nannies and not doing it yourself? Is that what you mean? It would be easier for women and people to step outside of the societal molds that have been cast for them and step more fully, more comfortably into their truthful roles. The roles that they feel comfortable in, whatever they may be. That doesn't seem to me to make any sense whatsoever. How do you step into a truthful role? What's that? Yeah, I mean, I first just had Archie, now I'm mum of a daughter. A little bit doesn't subtract a name, it would appear. And whether I thought it was going to happen or not, it did. I see the world differently through how she is going to see the world. So she's omniscient and omnipresent now, and how she's going to look at certain women as role models. And when I look at a lot of the women that I'm speaking to on this show, you included, I want her to understand that it's not just a box you have to fit into. Oh, to fit you into a box. But you get to be a full-fledged, interesting, curious, kind, strong, all the things human being. But you also get to be a woman with a voice. Ah, that voice again. And you have such a strong voice that I think for so many women it's just liberating. Because when you speak freely and truly, it gives people permission to feel that they can do the same. Word salad. Yeah, then the only way to break through that is to do what you do, which is to create zeitgeist moments through your content, to create cultural conversations that move the needle. What? I long to be a mum as much as I long to be a wife, and at the same time, also at a young age, I was a feminist. And despite what people would think, I didn't find those things to be mutually exclusive. Do you remember Wilma Flintstone from the Flintstones, or Jane Jetson from the Jetsons? Wilma wore pearls, and Jane was always perfectly polished. The happy housewife with the perfect apron, dinner in the oven, husband's slippers by the door. This was all aspirational to me. Being a mum was too. I'd saved up my allowance to buy a real diaper bag from Kmart, like real mums have, you know. I didn't want the fake one for my fake doll. I longed to be a mum as much as I longed to be a wife, and at the same time, also at a young age, I was a feminist. And despite what people would think, I didn't find those things to be mutually exclusive. The pressures imposed being a mum, a good mum, or a good wife. The ideals we try to live up to and the expectations we self-impose. As we heard today, they're pretty trapping. And they are, in many ways, a fallacy. Because you can be a feminist and be feminine. You can clutch your pearls one day and let your curls be wild the next. You can be a working mum in or out of the house, and you can have drinks with friends after putting your baby to bed. You can be the mum who says she needs a break for just a minute, and then if you're like me, sits in bed scrolling through pictures of, you guessed it, your kids. And you can be the mum who never misses a school pick-up or drop-off and bakes the perfect cookies, or be the mum who buys the cookies from the store, because that works too. Just as you can be the wife whose claim to fame is making pot roast, or the wife who admittedly makes only one thing well, reservations. I have friends who are like all of the above, and they all are. We're all doing the best we can. So maybe it's time to let go of these archetypes, no, stereotypes. These challenging, limited archetypes, no, stereotypes, riddled with so much judgment. So it's less about that's the right way to do it, that's the wrong way to do it, she's a good mum, she's a good wife, no, she's a bad mum, she's a bad wife. Instead, let's just focus on one thing, being a good person. Well, the thing is, you don't involve people because you just involve women. You don't involve men. They're persona non grata on this show. As I once read, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Pretentious twaddle. Those excerpts from the transcript give you precisely what I'm driving at. Meaningless nonsense for which this woman, and you have to credit her with this, has been paid several $1 million for generating. Have a think about that when you're considering whether to heat or eat. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.